Mom didn't say a word, but her eyes told me everything. I was standing in the kitchen, holding the envelope in my hands, heart pounding like a drum. The kind of envelope that changes everything. I hadn't opened it yet, but I didn't need to. The moment I looked up and saw my mom's face, I knew she already knew. She didn't say a word. No gasps, no questions, nothing. But her eyes? They told me everything. It's strange how a look can say more than 1,000 words. She just stood there, frozen like time had stopped. Her lips were pressed tight, like she was holding something back. Fear, maybe? Or disappointment. Maybe both. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, or if she was okay. But the truth is, I was too scared to hear the answer. Because deep down, I had a feeling this moment wasn't just about the letter. It was about everything that had been building up for months, maybe even years. We'd been drifting apart lately. Ever since Dad left, things had changed in the house. Quiet dinners, missed conversations, tension in the air we both pretended not to notice. But now, as I stood there, that silence became too loud to ignore. The letter was just the trigger. I looked back at her, waiting, hoping for her to say something. Anything. But she didn't. She just turned around slowly and walked away, leaving me alone with the letter and 1,000 questions swirling in my head. What was she hiding? Why couldn't she speak? And more than anything, what did her eyes really mean? That was the moment I realized this story wasn't just about what was in that envelope. It was about everything we hadn't said. And what happened next, I never saw coming. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just stared at it, like it might disappear if I waited long enough. But it didn't. It just sat there in my hands, heavy, like it was holding more than just paper. I could still feel Mom's silence lingering in the air, thick and strange. I couldn't shake the look in her eyes. It was like she'd seen something she wasn't ready for. Or maybe something she'd been expecting all along. Later that night, I found her in the living room, sitting in the dark. No TV on. No phone. Just her and that distant stare. I almost asked her again what was wrong, but the way she was sitting, shoulders slumped, hands clenched, I knew I'd just get more silence. So I sat on the other end of the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, but I was really just watching her out of the corner of my eye. I started thinking back. The strange phone calls she'd been getting lately, the ones she always took in another room. The quiet tears I'd seen her wipe away when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she'd suddenly started locking her bedroom door at night. At the time, I told myself it was just stress, work, life, being a single mom. But now it all felt connected. And that terrified me. I finally went to my room and opened the envelope. But it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't school stuff. It was a letter addressed to me, but not from Mom. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time. Someone I thought was gone. My hands started to shake as I read the first few lines. The handwriting was messy, like it had been rushed. There were words crossed out, parts rewritten. And every sentence made the air feel colder. Whoever wrote it knew things, personal things. Things no one else should have known. Things only someone close to us would ever mention. I could feel my chest tightening. This wasn't just some letter. It was a warning. Or maybe a confession. I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was, Mom had read it before me. That's why she couldn't speak. And now I was starting to understand why. But what I didn't know then was that this letter would change everything. I read the letter twice. Then a third time. Each word sank in deeper, like it was chiseling into my chest. It wasn't just some random message, it was from my dad. The dad who left 3 years ago and hadn't spoken to us since. No calls. No visits. Not even a birthday card. And now, out of nowhere, this letter shows up. But it wasn't an apology. It wasn't him asking to come back. It was a warning. He wrote about someone watching us. Someone he once trusted. Someone we both knew. But he never said their name. He just kept calling them him, like even writing it out would be dangerous. He told me to be careful, to trust my instincts, and to ask Mom about what happened the night he left. That part stopped me cold. All this time I thought he left because he didn't want to be part of our lives. Mom never talked about it. She just said he made his choice and we had to move on. But now I started wondering, was she protecting us or hiding something? The next day, I tried asking her about the letter. She looked at me, eyes already glassy, like she knew this moment was coming. But still, she didn't say a word. She just walked away. Again. It was like she was carrying some kind of guilt that was too heavy to speak out loud. That's when I decided to start digging on my own. I went up to the attic looking through old boxes, photo albums, anything that might give me a clue. And that's where I found it, an old family photo, torn right down the middle. My dad was missing from it. Literally. Someone had ripped him out. But in the corner, tucked behind the frame, was a name I didn't recognize. Just one word. Caleb. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that name. Caleb.
Who was he?
Why had my dad warned me? And why did my mom look like she'd seen a ghost every time I mentioned the letter? The more I searched, the more things didn't add up. And the deeper I went, the more I felt like I wasn't just uncovering my parents' secrets. I was stepping into something much bigger. It followed me everywhere. I started to notice things I hadn't before. Old voicemails on the home phone, short and cut off. Mom hanging up too quickly. Her checking the locks twice before bed. I even caught her staring out the window late at night like she was waiting for something or someone. The next afternoon, I skipped school and went to the local library. I didn't know where else to start. I typed in Caleb with my dad's full name. At first, nothing came up. But then, tucked deep in an old newspaper archive, there was a story from about 15 years ago.
A car accident.
2 names listed. Daniel Harris, my dad, and Caleb Rowe. I clicked on the article. They'd been best friends. The report said they were driving late at night, arguing. The car had spun out and hit a guardrail. Caleb was badly injured. My dad walked away. There was no mention of what they'd been arguing about. No follow-up articles. No legal case. Just a few lines and a blurry photo. But in the photo, my dad and Caleb didn't look like best friends. They looked like 2 people who didn't trust each other anymore. I printed the article and brought it home. That night, after dinner, I left it on the kitchen table. Mom saw it. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at it for what felt like forever. Then she finally spoke. "Where did you find this?" Her voice was quiet, but sharp. Like she was walking a tightrope between fear and anger. "I need to know who he is," I said. "I need to know what really happened." She sat down slowly, like her legs couldn't carry the weight of everything she'd been holding in. "Caleb was part of something your father got involved in. Something dark. He made a mistake, and someone paid the price." I asked her what she meant, but she stopped talking. Just shook her head and told me to leave it alone. But I couldn't. Because now I was starting to feel like whatever my dad had gotten mixed up in wasn't over. Like it had just been waiting. Later that night, I found another letter. Slipped under my bedroom door. No return address. No name. Just one line written in the same messy handwriting as the first letter. "You're in danger now, too." My hands went cold. I looked out the window, scanning the street. Empty. But something felt off. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I backed away and locked the window. That's when I heard the floor creak outside my room. Slow footsteps. One by one. And then a shadow stopped right outside my door. I held my breath. I didn't move. I just stared at the door, heart racing, waiting, terrified to find out who was on the other side. The shadow outside my door didn't move. For a moment, the house felt too still, like the kind of silence right before a storm breaks. I held my breath, my eyes locked on the narrow space between the floor and the door, waiting for a sign. Then the knob turned slowly, not in a rush, carefully. Like whoever was out there didn't want to wake anyone or didn't want me to know they were there at all. I jumped up, heart pounding in my chest, and grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy book from my nightstand. But before the door opened, the footsteps backed away. Quick. Like they'd changed their mind. I waited, frozen, for what felt like minutes before I finally opened the door and looked down the hall. Nothing. No one. Just the faint smell of cigarette smoke hanging in the air, something I hadn't smelled in this house for years. That's when it hit me. My dad used to smoke, but he quit before I was born. At least, that's what Mom always told me. I went downstairs, still shaken, and found her asleep on the couch, TV flickering quietly. I checked every lock, every window, but everything was shut tight. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been here. That someone was here. The next day, I decided to find Caleb. I didn't care what Mom said anymore. I needed answers. I went back to the library, digging deeper, and eventually found something. A mention in an old neighborhood directory. An address just outside town. The house looked abandoned when I got there. Overgrown yard. Windows covered in grime. But the mailbox had fresh tape sealing the lid. Someone had been checking it. I waited for an hour, hiding in the trees. Just when I was about to leave, a man came around the back of the house. Middle-aged, unshaven, wearing a coat that looked too heavy for the weather. He didn't look like a stranger. He looked like someone who didn't want to be found. I snapped a photo from a distance and backed away. When I got home, I showed the photo to Mom. She turned pale. "Where did you take this?" she asked, voice cracking. "Is it Caleb?" I asked. But she didn't answer. She grabbed the photo and ripped it in half. "He's not the one you should be afraid of," she whispered. "It's not just Caleb. There's someone else." My stomach dropped. "Who?" She looked me dead in the eye. "Your father wasn't running from Caleb. He was running from me." That's when the room started to spin. Every truth I thought I knew about my family cracked wide open. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to trust anymore. The letters. The silence. The shadows. It was all leading to something I wasn't ready for. But now, I didn't have a choice. Because just then, my phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. "You found Caleb. Now, let's see what you'll do with the truth." The message on my phone didn't have a name, just those chilling words that made my skin crawl. "You found Caleb. Now, let's see what you'll do with the truth." I showed it to Mom. Her face drained of color. She sat down like her legs gave out from under her, and for the first time, she started to talk, really talk. Years ago, before I was born, my dad and Caleb were part of something illegal. Nothing violent, but dangerous enough. A scheme involving stolen identities, fake documents, and a lot of money. They were in deep, and when things started to fall apart, my dad tried to back out. That's when he and Caleb had the fight, the one that ended in the crash. Caleb survived, but he blamed my dad for everything. And somehow, Mom had known all of it. "I was pregnant with you when your dad came clean," she said, eyes locked on the floor. "He wanted to turn himself in. I begged him not to. I said we could disappear and start over. But he couldn't live with the guilt," she told me. "He made a deal with someone higher up, someone who promised to erase everything, clean their records, in exchange for silence. That's who the real threat was. A man whose name Mom still wouldn't say. But the moment Dad went missing, Mom knew the deal had been broken. I didn't want to believe any of it. I didn't want to believe my family had been living a lie. But it explained everything. The silence, the fear, the letters. And then, as if the story had been waiting for the right moment to end, our front door opened. It was Dad. Alive. Different. Thinner, older, tired. He looked at Mom, then at me. "I had to let you believe I was gone," he said. "It was the only way to keep you safe. Until now." Before I could speak, there was a sound behind him. A car pulling up fast, tires screeching to a stop. Dad turned. "Go upstairs," he said sharply. "Now." But I didn't move. Because out of the car stepped someone I recognized from the torn photo. Caleb. Only he wasn't alone. And the man next to him, the one in the black coat, looked straight at me and smiled. And that's when I realized Caleb wasn't the villain. He'd been running too. The real enemy was still hidden, and he had just found us. The man in the black coat stepped forward, calm like he already knew how everything would play out. Caleb didn't look at us. His eyes were locked on my dad, like there was still something unfinished between them. For a few tense seconds, no one moved. Then Dad turned to me, his voice steady but low. "This is the man who made the deal," he said. "The one who erased our past and held it over us ever since." I looked at Mom. Her eyes were full of fear, but also something else, relief. Like she was tired of hiding, tired of silence. Caleb finally spoke, voice rough. I tried to stop him once. That's why he came after me. Your dad didn't betray me. I thought he did. But we were both just pawns. The truth hit hard. All these years, the letters, the fear, the silence, it wasn't just guilt or shame. It was survival. My parents had been trying to protect me from a man who built his power on secrets and who destroyed anyone who threatened to expose them. But now he had no control left. Because we weren't afraid anymore. Before things could turn violent, Dad pulled out a small recorder and hit play. The man's voice echoed through the room, calm, cold, and clearly incriminating. He'd recorded everything from years ago. Proof of the deals, the threats, the silence he'd bought. Dad had finally found a way to fight back. It didn't end in a dramatic fight or chase. Just a long, tense standoff until police sirens rang out in the distance. Caleb had tipped them off before he arrived. This time, he wasn't running. He was ready to face it all and help us end it. The man in the black coat didn't speak again. He just turned, slowly, and waited to be taken away. The days that followed were quiet. The kind of quiet that felt like healing. Mom talked more. Dad stayed. Caleb gave a full statement and disappeared again, this time on his own terms. There were still pieces of the past we didn't fully understand, but we didn't need every answer. We had enough. I never forgot the moment Mom looked at me in that kitchen, the moment her eyes said everything. It wasn't just fear. It was love. And maybe, in the end, that's what saved us. Because no matter how deep the lies go, the truth always finds its way out.